Well, tonight, President Trump leaves for Davos, Switzerland, where he will push his America First message at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting. You can watch his speech tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern right here on Fox Business. The president is set to meet with global business leaders and focus on why the U.S. is the best place in the world to invest. He says promoting America's turnaround and defending the country's interests will be his main objective.
The primary message is how well the United States is doing. And I say it all the time. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country, and now we have the hottest country in the world.
What do you plan to say to European leaders in Davos when they push back on your Greenland plan?
Well, I don't think they're going to push back too much. Look, we have to have it, so we'll see what happens. But let's put it this way. It's going to be a very interesting Davos.
And any moment now, the president will join Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt in the briefing room. We'll bring you that live when it happens. Eager to hear what he has to say, but Caroline, also eager to hear what you have to say about Davos and Greenland and the second first year and how you think things all go down there.
Well, at the last World Economic Forum, the theme was very much, we are bullish on America, we are bearish on Europe. Europe needs to get its economic act together, and it's not. This time, I think Trump is balancing, okay, we have a lot of domestic issues at home that we need to prioritize right now, home ownership, the credit card situation, but now we're also kind of infighting within Europe. NATO, the alliance, is kind of at risk right now over this situation with the security force that's been deployed there, and I am a bit bearish on that. As much as I think it would be a very strategic acquisition that would give us plentiful natural resources, and it's a deal in a vacuum, we can't afford this right now. The price tag for that should be applied to our exorbitant national debt, $38 trillion. And even if you take that component away, the constitutional authority isn't really there necessarily to either annex or buy it. The people who need to decide whether it needs to be bought are the Greenlanders. I just think this is a little bit treacherous because the NATO alliance was intact before this. Were they paying their fair share to the United States? Definitely not. And I think Trump has leveraged our position very well to make NATO contribute more. But that alliance was working. We do have a base in Greenland already. We have troops on the ground there. It wasn't defenseless. So I think, and in the spirit of affordability, which is the talking point for both sides of the aisle now, the tariffs that would be going from countries concerning Greenland, that's not really in the spirit of affordability.
All right,
either.
so Jackie, I'm hearing a lot of bearishness from Caroline on the whole setup for Davos and Greenland. What do you think?
I think we are in massive amounts of debt, but many people contributed to that debt, and nobody really has any plans of paying it off. It's still a problem that we're just going to kick down the road to our children and their children and beyond until at some point, the debt bomb just implodes. But with respect to what Trump is doing, I think that I used to work at a company where everybody there were lifers. They all worked there for 25, 30 years. They had a way of doing things. It was regimented. They had boundaries. They had systems and programs in place. And on my team, at the head of our group, we had somebody who was just a real innovator who came in and was like a bull in a china shop, creating things, destroying things, saying, why don't we try this? Why don't we do that? And all the people around that would have to approve or cooperate in some way to do it would always say, oh, no, we can't do that. No, you can't do that. And she would say, yes, you can do that. Go figure out a way to do that. A lot of these people were lazy and they wanted to do it their way and they didn't want to innovate and they didn't want to step outside of the box. And so I think that is the naysayers I'm talking about is kind of like Europe and NATO just saying, why can't we leave things alone? Why are you doing this right now? And Trump is saying, I'm trying to do something with a larger vision here. Can you help me out a little bit?
Right. And, Dagan, he's going to get up and speak at the briefing here in just moments. That's interesting. I mean, I think, he's going to do that and he's going to get on a plane and he's going to go to Davos and it's just setting the stage for the negotiation that he wants to have with European leaders at Davos. And I kind of agree with Jackie. I think what he's saying is you got to think bigger and longer term than you're used to. Quit being lazy. What do you think, Dagan?
I think the president's going to stand up and mention issues on affordability. I believe one of the kind of announcements was supposed to be being able to use your 401k assets for a down payment. Maybe he brings that up because it's not just because he's with the globalists at the Swiss boondoggle doesn't mean he stops thinking and caring about the American people. But I want to listen to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who Maria interviewed this morning, and she pressed him on the United States under President Trump and his administration taking stakes in U.S. companies and the rationale behind that. Listen to this.
There are 5, 6, 7 key industries that we have to reshore. So everything you just said, rare earth magnets, we've got to get out from under China's grasp. The semiconductors, I would say that the single biggest threat to the world economy, the single biggest point of single failure is that 97% of the high-end chips are made in Taiwan. Everything on your list is national defense.
You can use the excuse of national defense to take over part or all of any and every industry in the United States. And that is the dangerous path that this administration has walked down. And that's my central issue. You can claim that about any business. You Google, Meta, all information goes through these companies. Where's our 10%? Where's our 20%? And that's something that Brian and I have talked about endlessly, that's what's going to happen. The greater government overreach, the dangerous nature of government has different motivations. They do a terrible job at picking winners and losers, but they also have different motives and strange powers to screw competitors that don't exist in the private sector. And that's my issue. And oh, by the way, because people keep coming on the show and talk about how awesome our investment in Intel is doing. Well, we own currently $24 billion of the stock. If we sold it today, that wouldn't even cover 1/4 of one monthly interest payment.
Oh, but it's 100% gain, Dagan.
It doesn't matter.
We're good. We bought low, we sell high.
We're looking at raw numbers right now. And, $700 billion to buy Greenland is 4.5 months of interest on the debt based on last month.
Yeah, that's not even debt. That's the interest on that.
It's
a helpful way to measure everything because you realize how indebted we are. Can I ask you this, though, Taylor? So the markets are down, lots of consternation about the Greenland thing, blowing up NATO, tariff war, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we saw that in April last year. It turned around. Do you get the sense that we could be walking into a situation here where everyone's pants are on fire, or they think they are, and then Trump goes to Europe and walks out of this thing, maybe not getting what he said he needed, but getting what he actually needed and calming everything down. And it's another one of those situations where people lit their money on fire needlessly because they don't understand how Trump, to Dagan's phrase, the art of his deal and how he negotiates this stuff.
That is a totally plausible scenario. We've talked about it. If you participated in the Sell America trade last April, you didn't do so well because NVIDIA doubled its stock since April, right? When it was $95 a share or whatever. I'm pulling a playbook from Jackie. What if Trump was just talking about Greenland over the weekend to shift the conversation in Davos? What if he's playing 4D chess and we're all just here playing checkers and wondering, oh my gosh, Greenland, no, you can't do that. But it's to drive or steer a conversation in a certain direction. What if we get a big, beautiful bill 2.0 this spring? What if it includes a little bit more than everything we got in 1.0 and helps maybe, I don't want to say juice the markets, but juice the economy more, a little bit more of everything that we liked in 1.0. Maybe we start to get that. So Atlanta Fed GDP still at a 5.3%. Scott Bessent talked about that this morning. He also admitted that that is a very volatile measure. Absolutely, it is. But 5.3% so far sounds good. We're in the midst of earnings season, Brian. So far, so good. Very early, we're getting less than 10% of them this week. But let's see how the bottom lines of these companies do. Let's see how things start to turn out.
Caroline, last thought on just as we think about the talk just now from Trump and Davos. You mentioned cost of living, okay? President going overseas again. Foreign headlines dominating the conversation. Taylor's talking about a big, beautiful bill 2.0, but I don't think that's risen to the level of like the highest priority on the president's agenda right now. Do you think politically the risk is still very high that he's too focused, or people feel like he's too focused outside of the U.S. and not enough on what's happening on our own streets and in our own companies and households?
Yeah, look, on the campaign trail, he ran on kitchen table issues. And affordability, he tried to kind of dismiss as a nothing burger initially, and now he's realizing, no, this is a force to be reckoned with. Mamdani was just strategic enough to recognize it. But you could argue that Trump was always about pro-prosperity policies and affordability. It's just supply side instead of demand side, which works a lot better in the long run, as we know. Gen Z, young people, 18 to 29-year-olds, they're looking at the headlines dominating with all these foreign countries, and they're saying, okay, this is not what we were promised.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for some of this to subside and to, I mean, he is being innovative and creative, whether it's the Trump savings account or the credit card cap, although I'm not pro that. 50-year mortgage, Gen Z didn't buy that. So he's trying. It's just that it's not sticking yet. None of these proposals are really compelling because we know that a lot of them ultimately will make either things worse or they won't work.
The credit card cap is not Bernie Sanders. He's not, that is not what he's doing. I'm not Bernie Sanders either, but we both, I'm not acquitting myself with President Trump. He recognizes that these banks have gotten a pass for decades from Washington, and they have steamrolled over the American people. And he's telling them, that again, opening salvo, art of the deal, you better come to the table and start negotiating. And you better start bringing these rates down to something closer to 15%. That was what, shoot, that was even where rates were before people couldn't discharge their credit card debt in bankruptcy. So that's where he is on that. He is right on to call those banks out.